The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
This week on Garden Connections, we're talking about honorary gardens, tributes you can be a part of that honor special people. So let's salute the green thumbs out there. Stay with us. You're watching Garden Connections. Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm Amy Whitaker. Thank you for joining us. I'm happy to introduce Norman, Julie, and Kelly, and they are here to talk about tribute gardening. We welcome your participation in preparing for spring planting. Call in and pose your question. So tonight we are going to talk about plantings and different types of things we can do with our landscaping to honor people in our lives. What kinds of things do we want to think about, or what would we honor somebody for, or what kinds of people are we thinking about when we're talking about honorary planting?
Well, there's several reasons you can honor someone, but some of the most common ones are memory of a loved one, a special anniversary, birth of a child. Those are probably the most popular reasons why honorary plantings happen.
Any other?
And we also have the Veterans Memorial, which is honoring all those people who made the supreme sacrifice for this country, for our freedoms, and all those veterans who have served this great country, and so this is part of the honorary program.
So when we're going through and deciding how to honor these people, what process do we go through to choose what we are going to plant or what we are going to put in the garden for a specific person?
You can be a part of the planning process if you decide to honor a loved one in any way. You can choose the type of tree that you like to honor that member with. You can choose the location as long as it's on public property here in Austin. You can choose a location. You can help plant the tree. We will plant the tree for you. If you think that you would not be able to plant the tree, we'd be happy to do that for you.
And that would be through like the Spruce Up program?
Through the Spruce Up Austin program, yes. Yep.
And so if somebody wasn't wanting to go necessarily through your Spruce Up program, they could probably plant themselves within their own yards or gardens or communities as well. Mm-hmm. Do you know if any other communities in our area have planting programs?
I am not aware of that. I know that ours has been really successful. It's been going on since 1995, actually. Okay. One of our founding Spruce Up Austin board members, Joyce Maliner, came up with this idea to plant honorary trees for people. And probably in 2001, after we'd been planting trees for many years, we decided that we needed to give better recognition for the trees that we planted. We'd been keeping a log of them, but we wanted other people to be able to appreciate the trees we planted. So down at the mill pond, there's a kiosk, and we have all of the trees that we've planted in our program since its inception in 1995 through the current year. So you can go down there and see all the trees have been planted. It lists who they were planted for, the type of tree that was planted, and the location of the planting.
And so do the family members or the people doing the planting choose what kind of tree, or does Spruce Up help them choose what kind of tree?
We give them suggestions. We encourage them to select their own tree.
Okay.
And we're going to advise them to plant trees that are hardy for this area. Mm-hmm. Or talk to the local nurseries and find out the hardiest trees, because we want to make sure that once they go in the ground, they have a good chance of survival. What we do actually is we help take care of them for the first 3 years of their life. That's when they're the most tender. Mm-hmm. And once they get through that first 3 years without any problem, there's a very good chance that they're going to continue to grow to be healthy, strong trees.
And so through the Spruce Up program, they can plant them on any public property within Austin. What are some of those properties that people have planted on?
Well, the area down by the swimming pool there around the mill pond there, over by Eastside Lake, some of the parks, some of the smaller parks, the nature center,
Veterans
the
Pavilion.
Veterans Pavilion,
Veterans Pavilion.
Hormel Parkway.
So there's lots of opportunities
Oh,
and
yeah.
places around town that they can. Do they get to choose the placement themselves as well, or do you choose placement for them, depending on availability?
Park and Rec definitely gets involved with that.
Okay.
Now, we certainly try to honor their wishes as much as we can. But sometimes a tree looks so small when you're putting it in the ground, but once they get to maturity, their canopies can be quite large, and so they do want to make sure that there's no overcrowding of the trees. We have a form that guides people through the process. So it'll, ask them to pick a tree, give them tree suggestions. It lists all of the public parks that they could pick from to plant the trees. So, and then one of our board members, Gretchen Ramlow, is she heads up the program, the honorary tree program, and she's great at helping people with all their questions and just helping them get through those decisions and get the tree in the ground.
Do you find that most people are doing this as like a group or family effort, or is it kind of one-on-one, like a husband honoring a wife, or what would be, the most common group of people that are going to be doing these honorary plantings?
I think it's families, when they lose a loved one, that they many times will have a tree honoring a mother or a father, or if they lost a son or a daughter, you'll see them planted around town. We've seen them at the Veterans Pavilion. We see them at the Veterans Memorial. We've seen them planted all over Austin. As a matter of fact, people will pick them, and because when they lose a loved one, they want to leave some kind of legacy, and I think trees become a real legacy that's there and will always be there.
And people who plant those trees in honor of a loved one really do pay attention to the tree's growth. They will go and they will make sure that it's thriving, or they'll prune it a little bit, or just kind of check in on it every now and then. And it really does mean something to those people who have done that. And we have had people go out and look for their tree and call us and say, well, it doesn't look very good, and we have lost one or two over the years that we have had to replace. And so people who do plant those trees in honor of someone, it really does mean something.
Do you find that there's any correspondence with the size of the tree that people plant? Like, do people have a tendency, if they're planting for a son or daughter, to start smaller with something that they could kind of grow up with, or start larger, or is there not really any specific size that the planting goes?
Well, with our program, we actually have a minimum donation to get a tree planted through Spruce Up Austin. It's $150.
Okay.
And with that money, we buy the most mature tree that we can.
Okay.
So it's probably, would you think, 1.5, 2 inches around the trunk, which is a decent sized start for a tree.
Okay. Because I know I've had some people come in with children wanting to pick out a tree that the children can grow up with, and sometimes they like to start them small so that the child can watch them grow, similar to what schools will often do with the seedlings. They give children seedlings.
Yeah.
Would you consider that kind of an honorary planting?
We wouldn't plant that through our program.
Not
That
through
would
your
be too small. But certainly if somebody wanted to plant that in their yard, they can certainly do whatever they want. But that's kind of small. You really have to take good care of a tree for many years at that size.
At that size.
But we had, You know, the very first tree that we planted through our honorary program for Mike Ruzek, that was in 1995, so
That would
14, 15 years, 15, 16 years ago now. And I was talking to him about that not long ago, and he said his whole family got involved in that process of planting it. Now, since that time, his kids are grown and gone from the house, but his tree's planted down at the mill pond. And the kids will come back and walk around the mill pond, and they'll still go look at Dad's tree, and they're amazed at how much it's grown. We planted a spruce up tree for him, or a spruce tree. But, you know, I agree with Norm, probably honoring the deceased is the most popular, but we've had trees planted for some of the past mayors in the community. We've planted trees, for example, the Austin High School wrestlers help us a lot with our projects. They're great labor for us. So we planted some trees to thank them for all the work that they've done for us. And we planted trees for the September 11 victims. The Austin Daily Herald does a tab for us every year. It was just in the Arbor Day edition of their paper on Friday. We planted a tree to thank them. So really, the sky's the limit in thinking of reasons to plant trees and honor people. If it's that person that you think, gosh, what should we get for that person to thank them or to honor them, and it's the person that has everything, a tree is a great thought, and people really seem to appreciate that.
And it's there for a long time, and it seems like a good way to bring people together. I mean, do you see a lot of family togetherness through this program, or?
Absolutely. Again, people really, when they plant a tree in honor of someone, they really do check in on that tree, and you'll find family members coming back year after year to check on the growth of that tree. When Dennis Shemaska passed away, we planted an honorary tree for him, and then also out behind the college here by the Ball Diamond, which Denny Mashka was very involved with too, we planted 20 maple trees in the walkway there, and made quite an impact. And his whole family gathered and helped, and even the little grandkids grabbed little shovels and were shoveling the dirt in and helped planting the tree. It was really quite a day for them to honor someone, you know, very special to them in their life.
And so you can, everybody of any age, any size, any capabilities, can help out with choosing and placing and planting an honorary item, whether it's a tree or, I mean, could you even go as far as shrubs and flowers or a whole garden? Do you have honorary gardens per se around our area, or is it mostly just the trees?
Through this program, it's trees.
Okay.
But I think one thing too, having been on Spruce Up and having received a tree, I go down and check my tree to see if it's there. And my son has one also, and he's in Australia, and I always check to make sure his tree is still there. And so once a legacy is put down, you know, I think we will continue to monitor to see that that tree is growing. And I think people do that. It's like anything that is yours. It's just like in my own yard. My kids planted trees when they were young. They come home, and that's my tree, that's mine, and that's my brother. So I think people do like
very
trees.
Family oriented that way.
I think it's very important. Yeah. People take the responsibility, and they take ownership in something that's something very unique. A tree is very unique, and you know, Austin being a tree city, it's very important too that we have trees.
If you're a member of Spruce Up Austin, after 5 years they plant a tree for your, you know, being a volunteer for Spruce Up Austin. So there's been many trees planted just for volunteers.
To thank those of you that have helped beautify our community with them.
And we are, as Norm said, we are a tree city. And you have to qualify to become a tree city. You have to plant a certain number of trees within the community over a certain period of time. And again, Park and Rec is also really should be credited with that too, because they have also done a lot with Spruce Up Austin to help maintain that status of spruce up, and they have been very active in that too.
And I know earlier we were kind of talking a bit about the Veterans Memorial here in town. What goes into the planning of a memorial type garden or plaza in remembering people?
Well, actually the Veterans Memorial started in 1990, and Spruce Up they did part of the planning, the beautification of it, the laying out of the trees that are around it, and the bushes that are there. And what it takes is the fact that Veterans Memorial was designed for those who made the supreme sacrifice for their country. And now we have what we call a walk of remembrance. And a walk of remembrance is a paver that's placed down so that every person who ever served the United States military, which keeps us free and maintains our freedoms that we take for granted, and that's why the pavers are there. And Spruce Up has always worked with us, and as a matter of fact, they work today to help beautify the area, clean it up, make it look presentable, because it's a place that we honor in this community, and it's nice to see beautiful trees, shrubs, and that it's kept up. And I think we as veterans have to thank Spruce Up for doing such a wonderful job for us too.
So not only have you beautified the area with plants and plantings, but you have the pavers. And what is actually on each paver?
Each paver has the name of the individual who served in the United States military, branch of service that he served in, and if he was in a conflict, you would have the conflict there. If they weren't in a conflict, you may just have the date of service. So it's for anybody who's ever served in the United States military, and they do not have to be from Austin. They can be from anywhere. Sometimes you come from some other area and you move to Austin and you're here a short time, but you consider this your home, so it's nice to have a paver there that you can be remembered for.
Have any of you ever done any honorary plantings?
Well, I have an interesting story for the trees we planted for our children in our yard. When we first moved into the home, we planted 2 trees for our daughters, who at that time were 5 and 7 years old, right in the front yard. And those girls, I've never seen a kid pay so much attention to a tree in my life. They loved those trees, and they'd go out and sit and read to them and pamper them. They named their trees, and they had this little competition between the 2 of them, whose tree was going to grow fastest. Well, the second year, they discovered Miracle-Gro. And so the one daughter over-fertilized her tree, and it died. She was devastated, absolutely devastated, and we couldn't figure out what in the world happened, because it was coming along so nicely. Well, then we realized that she fessed up and said that she had over-fertilized it. So we replanted another tree, but fortunately for her, she happened to have gotten the faster growing variety of tree, and her tree is the biggest in the front yard now. It's a beautiful celebration maple, and it's still her tree. And you know, she's grown, she's out of the house now, she's got her own child, but she still remembers that that's her tree, and it's very special to her.
Has she ever mentioned starting that or following through with that tradition with her children?
Yes, but right now she's not a homeowner, so, but I'm sure that she will once she settles down in her own place.
Someplace a little more permanent, so you don't have to worry about trying to take the tree with.
That's
exactly. Probably something to consider when you're thinking about planting an honorary tree for someone. It's got to be a relatively permanent placement.
Yeah.
Well, through one of our Yard of the Months that we do through the summer, there was a family that brought a tree with them. I want to say it was from Michigan. Do you remember that, Julie?
I don't remember, but it was harder to the zone. I know that it was something, must have been a Midwest state.
So they brought that tree with them when they moved and replanted it here in Austin in their yard here, and it's growing well. So those trees can really mean a lot to people.
Yeah, people take great care of those trees, whether you're big or small, it really doesn't matter. When you plant those roots, basically, it really does mean something to people. And we've also had a family here in town who planted a birch tree when their son was born. And typically birch trees don't get, extremely large, and their lifespan is probably not that of an oak or a maple. But if you go to their front yard where they planted this birch tree, it is huge for a birch tree. I've never seen such a large birch tree. It is probably 35, 40 feet high. It is absolutely huge. And so they evidently took great care of that tree also, and it is still there. So
we planted a tree through the Spruce Up Austin honorary tree program for my grandmother down by the mill pond, because she loved walking around that mill pond, complaining about the goose poop. Every day we'd listen to her, and it was just a special place. That's how we picked our place, of where we were going to plant it. Well, then when we were trying to pick a tree, my grandma was Norwegian, so we ended up going with a Norway maple, and thought that would be perfect for her. We got the tree in the ground, and the whole family got together, and we opened a bottle of wine, and we all had a little toast, and spilled a little in there for Grandma. So you can really make a fun time of it.
We have 3 trees that my 3 boys planted, and two of them that are there are Norway pines, which is our state tree, and they came from northern Minnesota, where we're originally from, and we planted them. And one was second base for many years, so it was stunted, but it now is caught up. And the other one, my youngest son, said, well, the pines were growing very slowly, so he planted a cottonwood. And then it broke off, and he put tape around it, and now that thing must be up about 75 feet in the air. But he had taped it, because he was not going to get beaten up by his 2 brothers. So they are special, because when we had our 50th wedding anniversary last year, they're still picking their trees. See, there's mine, and look, mine's bigger than yours, and so the kids still take pride in those 3 trees they planted, and they've been there a long time. Well, I've been here 40 years, so the trees have been there quite a few years.
And I think, too, down at the Veterans Memorial, Spruce Up was down there today. We were actually taking the old landscaping out. It's been there for quite some time, and we're donating $1,000 to fixing up that whole landscaping area. They're going to get the pavers down there, and it's going to be all completed by Memorial Weekend. So we certainly invite people to go down there and take a look at the area.
Do you see a lot more interest around certain holidays, or is it pretty consistent throughout the year?
I think people, throughout the year, I think people, it's a consistency, and I think people like to leave a legacy, and I think what Kelly just said about her grandmother, I think this is true. It was a special place for her, even though she may have complained, but she loved it. And if you can have some Norwegian heritage or whatever you may be, it's nice to be able to bring a tree that does represent them and their beliefs. And I'm half Norwegian, so that's why I have Norway pines. But it is a state tree, too, and you don't see too many Norway pines in southern Minnesota because they're not really a southern Minnesota tree. But there are 2 in my yard.
But that's why it's important for people who plant honorary trees to be involved in the selection of the tree, because they may want to have a little Norwegian in their tree. So it is really important that they can choose, what celebrates the life of the person they're trying to honor. So
we get requests all year, but we do wait and plant the trees in the spring and the fall, because those are the best times to plant. And we want to make sure, again, what's most important to us is that we help plant the tree and it's going to live. So that's why we keep such a close eye on it for the first 3 years and want to make sure we plant it at the right time.
Yep, so if people are wanting to do them, it may be, there may be an important date, but they've also got to think about, what's going to be best for the plant that they're planting if they do want it to survive and have that longevity. So when people are choosing placement based on not only the culture that the plant needs, but also maybe a favorite place that a person has been, the type of tree based on maybe something that represents them. What other types of things can you think of that would represent a person? Like you had mentioned Norway pine and Norway maple for Norwegian. What other ideas might you have on that?
Well, we also had a gal who lost her husband, and he was a scientist over at the Institute, and he had a liking for ginkgo trees.
Okay.
And they had planted a ginkgo tree in a home that they purchased here when they first moved to town. And the ginkgo tree is still alive, and it is quite large and healthy and thriving. Again, probably not really hardy to this zone. I mean, it will survive, but not recommended, let me say. And but some do survive. And then they wanted to plant another tree, another ginkgo tree, in his honor. And it was in the Mill Pond area there, and she actually lived up in the cedars, and so she could look out her window and see the ginkgo tree. And I don't know if the ginkgo tree is still there or not. But
well, thank you for all of your ideas on honorary planting. Half hour goes by fast all the time. And for more information, log on to ksmq.org and click on Garden Connections. You can catch past episodes, join the blogs, and tell us about your garden experiences. Email the show at garden@asmq.org. Now that you are ready to honor your loved ones, tune in next week when we'll talk about ideas for flower gardens and what you may want to plant. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Whitaker. See you next week.